Hi, host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People. And I've been chatting with Felix off camera for quite a bit of this drive here about various political, philosophical things and other such nonsense. I want to talk a little bit about his, we can't dress us into darkness like that.
Forgive me.
Yeah, well, here, let's push this one too.
I got it. There it is.
I want to talk about the brain in the box. You said that Felix was telling me the other day, just right now, that he is a brain in a box. Tell us about that, Felix. How do you like being a brain in a box?
Okay, if I am a brain in a box, I feel no less pleasure from intellectual conversation than were I actually a human being in the real world. The fact that the simulation does nothing to detract from my experience means either my irrational attachment to the idea that my interaction with the real world has some actual meaning is either a crock of shit because it doesn't and I'm a brain in a box, or I'm kind of an entitled asshole for even questioning the origin of my happiness and not just being happy that I'm happy.
Well, do you think you would be, do you think it's conceivable for a given consciousness, the same consciousness, to be moved from one body to another? Or do you think your consciousness is tied to your body beyond just the brain?
Oh, that's an interesting question, because I feel that so many of our learning experiences early on come from our body that it would feel like a completely alien experience to have your conscience shifted to a new body. There was even a really weird movie that came out when I was younger, Freaky Friday, in which a parent and child have their consciences switched, and that immediately produces discomfort, even though they theoretically shouldn't have a level of intimacy. They are parent and sibling. That's probably one of the most intimate, if not the most intimate relationship. So that would probably be the easiest, most comfortable switch for consciousness. And that felt totally foreign and discomforting. So I think that would happen. I think kind of like people who experience organ rejection, I feel you might experience body rejection. I think your conscience would understand that.
You would become sick. Your consciousness would become sick from the weight of loss of familiar wandering ground.
I feel that, so I guess this is the best way to conceptualize it. Let's say you're used to the length of your arm for the entirety of your life. You know how long you have to extend your arm before you could reach the drink in front of you, how long you have to bring it back before you hit yourself in the face. I feel that changing your consciousness to a significantly different body would lead to a huge disconnect and basically relearning everything other than walking. Like relearning how to manipulate utensils without stabbing yourself in the face, or biting too hard on a spoon and breaking a tooth because you're not familiar.
How much is that really part of your identity? You could say the same thing if you had some sort of accident that's caused a temporary paralysis that you come out of.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody would say that changes your identity. Mm-hmm. What I'm questioning is...
That's true, so an amputee isn't any less themselves because they lost a limb in an accident.
Correct. However, they haven't... there is less of them.
Physically, yes.
Physically, yeah.
Oh my god.
The thing is, they're not in a different body. Their own body doesn't work right anymore.
Oh, so an amalgam of their old body, like an android like they used to be?
No, what I'm saying is that the person who's the corollary we're using here isn't exactly a corollary, because the person remains in their own body. It's their own body that's changed. It's not that they have been actually transferred into a different body.
New body, yeah.
And my real question is, in some way, does the consciousness... we're not exactly sure where it is or what it is.
Yeah.
In the sense that we know that just putting electricity onto a brain doesn't cause consciousness to occur, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So in that regard, why might it not be the case that in fact the shade of consciousness itself is determined by other parts of your body besides just your brain? We don't think of the knee as having any impact on consciousness because we can break our knee and we're still the same person.
Yeah.
But what if we had a different knee? Maybe the broken knee is breaking its ability to produce physical utility, but not breaking its core nature of
being a part of you.
Sort of like bubbling up consciousness, contributing to the consciousness state.
Yeah. Well, when I think of this idea of switching my consciousness to a completely different body, it kind of brings about two questions for me. The first is something that, like, I used to be a psychology major, and what was driving me was my own thoughts about nihilism and confronting death, and maybe the possibility that death is a necessary aspect of the human psyche. So I don't know whether or not it's a good idea for me to abnormally extend the duration of my consciousness. What if they're only constructed to last maybe 100 years or more, or a little less? I feel that maybe I could degrade to the point of madness, and that would suck, because I like being lucid, at least as far as I know.
Here's what I want to be able to do, though. I want to be able to take that consciousness, this one, and I want to be able to move it to a like within the same system, right? I want to partition, and I want to move it to a partition of the current identity, segment it off, and then start the new identity with some core kernels from the partitioned off one, and then continue having sort of accessible interplay between the two. Don't partition them off completely, like have a fuzzy border until you get that new identity rolling. So if you have to, it'll be slow.
So like a transitionary period.
Right, during the transitionary period, the way I conceive of this would be like this. You and I are interacting, and I'm switched over to the new identity. I still seem pretty much like Eric, but my consciousness is kind of almost blank in certain ways.
Yeah.
And so you're like, hey, you want to go see that new movie about penguins and ducks and how they love each other? And then I normally I'd be like, what? No, actually, yeah, I think I did. That sounds interesting. What are you talking about? I want to go see this thing now. Let's go, come on. But the new consciousness, because it doesn't have anything it doesn't have enough to draw from yet, it doesn't have enough experience to fill the gaps it needs to come up with a good answer to that, it's going to pause, there's going to be a delay as it accesses in a more slow fashion than would naturally be the case, the partitioned off old identity, right?
Yeah.
And so, in that regard, you could have a series of diminishing returns. So each successive identity would be a little bit lower ceiling.
Yeah.
Until you filled up the whole capacity of identity.
You become you again, or a new you.
But at that point you're full, right? If you've had done that as many times as you can, and the last identity is kind of like, yep, I'm Bob.
Now I know.
Sure do like that. No, don't like that. That's basically all there is to Bob,
Yeah.
But that would be a potentiality. You guys get a new body, but then you get a new identity at the same time, and you keep your old identity.
Well, I honestly don't think that, because I'm conflicted about the idea that your body at the same time has an incredible significance to your identity, and at the same time it doesn't. Because if it does have significance to your identity, then I am not one to say that you should not have tattoos. If your body's condition is significant to your identity, you should be able to modify your body in a sense that it fits your identity. However, if I fall into that pitfall of logic, then that means that when your physical body changes, your identity itself changes. And I don't like that assumption, because that would mean that individuals who have some catastrophe happen to them and lose the ability to walk. I don't want to live in a world where the loss of the ability to walk makes them a fundamentally different person. I feel like that's ableist.
But it does make them a fundamentally different person from their own experience. Unavoidably, their experience is fundamentally different now as a person who has limited ability than it was prior to the accident, right?
Uh-huh.
So why then would we think that that doesn't count as a change in identity? Just because somebody's identity has changed by an accident and they're no longer functioning in the normal range of human ambulability, what's that called? No, ambulatoriness.
Yeah.
Ambulatory. They're not functioning in the normal range of that. That does change who they are.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean they have to say that, it doesn't mean that they don't have a point. They're like, well, I don't want to be the crippled guy.
Exactly. I don't like that idea of body changing identity. Like going from Hank to going to crippled Hank.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is, what's interesting is I'm talking with fifth people. There's a guy named Tavis, and he often comes in and go to meeting. You can write whatever you want in your name. You can write down boot face if you want. He often writes, or a couple of times, he's written cripple as a thing, and he's obviously expressing the sort of political side of that. That I want to make that up front and say, look, you deal with me as somebody with a handicap and your own preconceptions, because you can't necessarily tell in this setting that I am handicapped.
So don't assume like, oh, did you get up and walk to the fridge? Like, don't make statements like that.
Oh, you like playing frisbee too, Tavis?
Yeah, don't make generalizations. I guess the origin of my problem with the idea that body can both be significant to identity and irrelevant to identity is, I think that identity is an actively shaped force. It's not something that you're born with. It's something which you create and you fashion. And while there are individuals who believe that, I understand that, like, they don't think that their handicap is anything to be ashamed of, and it's not. So they gladly understand that they're handicapped and embrace it.
Let me pause, okay? So, okay. Let's now move over to the notion of transgenderism and whether or not it's a quote-unquote legitimate thing to do. Now, I'm not saying, I am not in any way, shape, or form advocating that anybody be prevented from doing to their body. It's their body, they own it. Yeah. I am not trying to limit their ownership rights. I am saying, is this an example of a healthy individual making a healthy and wise choice? Is it an example of what's referred to as body dysmorphia, which is saying, like, you have some sort of mental illness and it says my body
have to change your body.
Is it like an eating disorder, like anorexia or something? Is it rather a legitimate form of sexuality, like homosexuality and heterosexuality, or bisexuality? Is it, and here's one provocative question. Regardless of what your answer is, would it be a healthy form of identity to say, my identity is as a person with a disability, and so I'm going to disable myself by chopping off this leg? Would that ever be a healthy expression of a real identity? I really was meant to be born handicapped.
Yeah, that is actually what a lot of dysmorphics say happens to them. Like, I don't identify with this limb, I am going to forcibly remove it. And I would treat that the exact same way that I treat tattoos. Whether or not I subscribe to your ideology, I cannot infringe upon your right to do with your body what you will, unless it severely interferes with another individual's body. You could do whatever you want.
But I would argue also that that individual does not have any entitlement to have somebody do it for them. So they don't have any entitlement to get a doctor to do that. And if I am a doctor, in my opinion, the doctor doesn't necessarily have a right to engage in that, even if it's consensual, because of the nature of the profession.
Oh, like to do no harm.
Right.
And since it has the potential to do bodily harm, well, not potential, it does legitimate bodily harm. Yeah, like surgery always imparts risk.
Right. They're violating their duty.
Their Hippocratic oath.
Not just that, but their professional duty. So you have a professional duty not to facilitate people in objectively harming themselves because of a mental illness, if that's what we determine it is.
Yeah.
Now, if we were determined that it's not, it's a totally legitimate duty, it's a totally legitimate choice somebody makes, it's a healthy choice, then the doctor's obligation would change.
Yeah.
So the question is of some importance, because while they may have the right to change their body, they don't have the right to force other people to help them.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess I would approach it in the same way that I approach the idea of euthanasia, whereas it's completely against the Hippocratic Oath and the job of a doctor to aid an individual in ending their own life. I do believe that individual determination of what their body is supposed to be trumps the idea that as a state we should regulate it.
I'm not saying that though. I'm not advocating for regulation. I'm advocating that we take a moral stance on this.
Okay.
And the issue being, if I'm a doctor, what's the right thing for me personally, morally to do?
I guess it all depends on what your idea of life is.
I don't think it's comparable to euthanasia. I think euthanasia doesn't do. You're making the question with euthanasia when you say it does harm. Because
like
the justification for it is that it ultimately prevents harm, because the suffering, the kind of life that's lived of just unbearable suffering is more harmful than the
continuation
loss
of
the sanctity of life. Yeah. So, quality of life, sanctity of life.
Well, I guess I don't see a difference in the mental anguish of a terminally ill patient as being any different from the anguish of somebody being forced to live their life in a body they don't identify with. I feel that anguish is just as real and deserves to be addressed.
What does it mean to say you don't identify with a part of your body, though?
I guess what it means is it causes me such inherent discomfort to live with the body I currently have. I can never freely associate myself with joy. For example, an amputee who's given a prosthesis, after a very long time, they begin to identify with the image of themselves with the prosthesis on, because it gives them the ability to interact with the identity they had before the incident. And I feel that...
Okay, but hold on. Do we have any knowledge? I mean, I normally am not one who's big on evidence. It's kind of like an unnecessary thing. In this case, I'm curious, have they done any studies about people who successfully get part of their body removed? Are they happy they did it? Does it satiate their hunger, whatever that hunger is? Or do they just want to cut off another body part next?
The only instance that I have any information to draw from was not an instance in which keeping the body part was a choice. It was a life or death scenario. It was either you remove the body part or you die. Right. And even removing the body part didn't impart a great chance of survival. And the individual now identifies with themselves only with the prosthetic on, because it fits their interpretation of what their body is. And it causes that person great discomfort and great pain, not only to be themselves without this prosthesis, but to be seen by others without this prosthetic.
Okay, but that's, again, it's sort of analogous, right?
Yeah, it's in nowhere equal to the transgender problem, but I apply the same kind of logic that if I have a problem in forcing that person to remove their prostheses, or forcing a doctor not to give it to them because it does cause harm. It does harm the body greatly. It causes infection.
The prosthesis?
Yeah. I don't think it's okay for a doctor to say that you are harming your own body by maintaining your identity as an able person.
And all these examples examples, though, the benefit or one side or the other is much more bright line than in the transgender issue or in the example of somebody making themselves intentionally crippled because they identify with that identity. In those instances, what I'm saying is we already know that consent can be, the capacity of an individual to consent to things is not unlimited.
Yeah.
That if you are
sick, you can't give consent.
And additionally, even if you are not sufficiently well informed, you can't give consent. So if somebody who's really well informed about antique books says, "Oh, I want to buy that book from you," and it turns out that it's a first edition, whatever, and the person knew it but didn't tell you, and you don't know anything about books.
I didn't give informed consent because I didn't have information,
and they can't rip you off like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the question of whether or not it's a disorder, a mental disorder that needs to be treated in some other way than to just
give them what they want.
Give them what their words say.
True.
Now, that's my core position is I don't think it's going to make them happy. I really don't. But of course, I could be wrong. But I want to know. I know that, like Caitlyn Jenner, right? She wants to go back at some point. She says.
What? Sorry, I just have great distaste for her.
I know. It causes me discomfort to think about that sort of stuff.
I guess, like, the reason that I give it credence is because, like, my knowledge of the DSM, like, how we determine what is a mental illness, lets me know that we haven't always been very inclusive. Like, up until the very last version of the DSM is the only one that stops recognizing homosexuality as a disease, as a mental disorder. Like, not even 2016, so like 60 to 70 years ago, not even a century, we still regarded homosexuality and alternative sexualities in all of their forms as diseases. And I don't want to fall into the pitfall of immediately discrediting transgenderism just because it's so new as a disorder. Like, I think that we should probably wait maybe 50 years to the point where there's some, like, actual scientific research behind it.
Okay, but let me ask you this question. It seems to me that a transgender person wants to be seen as a woman. But nobody sees them as women. They all see them as a distinct third thing, a transgender person.
Yeah, you're not, since you are inherently this gender, you are not a part of us.
Well, and then, the other thing is there seems to be a belief or a request on the part of the transgender community for others to see them as they wish to be seen. But that's not something that people get to ask in life. I don't get to ask you to see me as I want to be seen. I get to behave in a way that reflects the behaviors that I want to be reflecting, and then you make whatever meaning you were going to make out of it. I have an issue with the pronoun. I don't have an issue with the name. Okay, if you want to tell me your name is Martha, and I'm call you Martha from now on when I address you by name, that seems to me a reasonable amount of sovereignty over language, over my language. Yeah. Because it's your name.
Yeah.
But when you ask me to change my pronouns from he to she, even though I don't see you as a woman, then to me that's an excessive demand upon my language and my consciousness.
Okay.
So I either have to misrepresent how I see you or be rude. I don't like that.
I get, well, when faced with that kind of situation, the way I look at it is the same way I look at the idea of dead naming. Referring to Caitlyn Jenner as Bruce Jenner, or to somebody who subscribes as any gender as their former name.
But see, I didn't say that.
No, I know the name thing is not what you're talking about. What I'm talking about is the specific change in identity. Like, I think it's problematic to retroactively remove the existence of Bruce Jenner post Caitlyn Jenner. Like, I don't think that the experiences which they had are any less valid just because now we refer to them as Caitlyn as opposed to a few years ago we referred to them as Bruce.
Okay, but what about the
as far as
distinction I'm making regarding pronouns being an excessive, being demanded upon my language?
I don't like gendered pronouns to begin with. I think that we should switch to things like there and them. They function like exactly the same and don't fall into the pitfall of gendered language. Like, I make a conscious effort to try to avoid gendered language.
But that is, you're making a conscious effort to be less clear, to convey less efficiently. Those things are bad things, not good things. I agree with the they when you're not sure, or if you want to talk about one, you don't have to use one. But the notion that we should avoid he and she, that's appalling, because it means that the ability of a pronoun to reference its antecedent becomes severely limited. I can't say, I'm saying like, well, Delilah and Abraham were talking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first Delilah said blah, blah, blah. Then Abraham said blah, blah, blah. So she replied blah, blah, blah. And he said this, and she said that, and he said that. Yeah, I'm able to, I have more flexibility with language. I'm able to convey things more efficiently. But regardless, it doesn't even matter if I can point to any impact benefits. The point is, why should someone else get to control my language beyond their own name? I get the fact that it makes perfect social sense. You have a sort of social responsibility to address somebody by the name they request.
Yeah.
But that's a different thing than asking me to pretend as though I see you as a woman, even though you are a man because you have a Y chromosome.
I don't know, because I guess the way I think about it is the same way I look at derogatory language. Regardless if I believe the use of a word was meant to be derogatory, if the individual feels and has legitimate harm associated with the use of that term, I don't believe it's too massive an infringement on the rights of another to basically say you can't use language which they feel derogatory in their vicinity.
Okay,
refer to them however you like when they're not around.
But hold on. There's a big difference between addressing and referring.
Okay.
Right? They may have good claim upon how I address them. They do not have good claim on how I refer to them. I'm not talking to them.
Okay, so like, for an example would be like a newspaper. They're writing an article not toward the person, but about the person, so they shouldn't have to change their pronoun.
Well, I'm talking about talking with them, really, is what I'm talking about, is that I respect Tiffany's right to be called Tiffany. 100%. When in a conversation earlier today, I said, and so I've got Tiffany doing this thing, and I'm really excited because he's really good at it, and then he stopped and corrected me. And I said, well, we need to have another conversation. I'm talking to people about this subject because I don't like that, and I'll tell you why. And I want to see what you think about it. Okay. And he's like, yeah, I'm totally down to have that conversation. My position being, I don't think of him as a woman. Why should I call him she? I don't accept your gender language as bad critique, so I decline the option they. If I were to accept the option they, would have the same exact problem as she. It doesn't come naturally to me because it's not consistent with my perception of this individual who is biologically male.
I guess I feel that it's not an entirely biological determination. I think that the ideas of masculinity and femininity go really undercut when we talk about the transgender issue. And I feel that using terminology around somebody that they don't like because it imparts on them an either masculine or feminine interpretation, I think that you should give them the same credence that you would regarding their name. If it doesn't identify them and like it doesn't make the situation any better, why should we continue?
How How far does that go? I mean, if they say to me, would you accept this, or is there a clear line based on identity, or what? If they ever say, I'm not transgender, but my dog is, and I'd like you to refer to my female dog as he from now on.
I wouldn't buy that, because they're making the assumption that they know what their dog's perception of gender is. Like, I can't decide for another individual that they're transgender.
So why can the transgender individual decide for me how I perceive the notion of maleness and femaleness? I don't think I'm oppressing them in any way by saying, I don't evaluate the term man or woman based on as something that is determined individually as a choice. I view it as determined biologically by your chromosomes. So if you have a Y chromosome and therefore we're born with a prostate, if you have a prostate, you're not a woman.
Okay.
You're an Adam's apple, you're not a woman.
Okay, I can see the biological perspective in biological cases. Like, I think that...
What the fuck is your problem, asswipe?
Look, I don't think it's okay for the social level to be mixed into the scientific level. Like, if a transgendered individual who subscribes to the female body is an inherently male genetically, I don't think that a doctor should listen to them when they say, I don't want you to give me that medication because it's not the medication that would be given to a woman because of hormone reasons. I want a different medication. Like, no, you get the medication which you need to live, or you could choose to die. But I'm not going to give you medication which I know is going to cause you an ill. Like, I don't think that the societal...
But I'm a woman and women take birth control pills. Now give me my birth control pills.
No, because it could literally cause you to get cancer.
It could cause me to get pregnant if you don't give them to me.
No, you can't, because you are not biologically a woman.
Well then, but you have to call me she anyway.
Yes, I do, but that doesn't mean that you are physically she.
Why do you have to? Why does that make sense?
Because I believe the social obligation outweighs the scientific obligation in every social atmosphere, whereas the scientific...
I don't think you're doing anybody any favors by playing into this thing where someone else gets to determine my definition of man and woman. I am not oppressing this individual by speaking naturally. He's oppressing me by making me attend to my pronoun usage. It's fine if he says, you're addressing me. I do have some claim upon how you address me. Fine. I get that. I agree with it even. If you want to call yourself some other name, and you tell me, I prefer to be called by this name, that's the name I'll call you. If you were asking me to change my pronoun usage and my preference, you were interfering with my conversation with some third party. If I'm using he or she, I'm not talking to you directly. So I know you're in the room, but as far as I'm concerned, remember, you're Tiffany, a male, not a female. So why would I refer to you as she?